Can you all hear me? Just type yes if you can. And welcome everybody to the Fearless Flyer live webinar. We will be starting in just a few moments. My name is Lawrence Layton. I'm the host and therapist of the Fearless Flyer program. Hopefully we'll also have Chris, the senior EasyJet pilot. He's just having a few internet problems at the moment, but hopefully he'll be able to log on to the webinar very shortly. But he'll be on hand to answer any of your sort of technical questions. And we have today Mark, who's the course director, and interestingly, he's actually a former phobic. So say hi, Mark.
Good evening, everybody.
Okay, so obviously it's great to see so many on the webinar today. I won't say hello personally to everybody because there's so many of you, but just one great big hello to everybody. So look, tonight is your opportunity to ask the Fearless Flyer team any questions about the course. So I want you to really start sending in your questions now, and we will try to get through as many of the questions as we can. So just send whatever questions that you have through now. So whether it's a technical aviation question or a question about the coping strategies or any other question that you've got on your mind, just keep those questions rolling in all the time. And as I say, we're going to try to get through as many questions as we possibly can. And we really want to give you the confidence in our course, and we hope by the end of this live webinar that you'll realize that you're not a lost cause, and that we can genuinely help you to become a fearless flyer, which we know is totally life-changing. And we've successfully helped over 2,500 people to date. So just imagine what it would mean for you to become a fearless flyer, and really imagine your life where you can actually go on holiday and enjoy the holiday. Imagine being on your holiday and you're relaxed about the journey home instead of dreading it 2 to 3 days before it's time to leave. And just imagine how proud your family and your friends will be when you're free from this absolutely horrible fear. It really would be life-changing. So, okay, let's just take a look at some of the questions. Let's see. As I say, we're trying to get through as many of these questions as we possibly can. Okay, so first question that's coming in is what happens on the ground course? Well, basically, it's a 3-hour ground course, and in the first half, I've got everybody at ease and explain how your mind creates fear. And once you understand, this is really important, once you understand how you create fear, you can learn how to change it. What's really important to point out is that there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken, right? Fear is just a pattern of behavior that can be changed. And what people are most surprised about is that the course is actually a load of fun. You wouldn't necessarily expect that, but there's some really funny moments, even though we're talking about a very serious topic. So everybody sits theatre style. We always do it from a hotel, and there's a sort of real production values to it. There's a proper stage set. And people always comment on the way out that actually it was a really enjoyable day, or even if we do it in the evening, as well as it being practical. And the point is, I totally believe that if you're having fun, then you're absolutely going to learn more easily. And also in the first half, we have a senior EasyJet pilot who goes through the technical aspects of flying. In fact, I think Chris has actually managed to get his internet connection. Chris, are you there? I'm not sure if Chris is there. Mark, do you know if Chris has managed to log on?
Well, no, I've seen him just come on, but I know other people having a few technical glitches. Just so you know, Lawrence, because I've received an email from someone who said they can't get into the webinar. So hopefully people are joining us now.
Okay, all right.
Well, I think Chris just came on. Chris, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Can now.
Okay, so Chris, that's great timing. I was just literally asking sort of what we actually do in the first half when it comes to the senior EasyJet pilots. So you're the best person to answer that, Chris.
Well, firstly, sorry everybody for being a little bit late getting online. I certainly had a technical difficulty tonight. I had to reboot my computer twice just to get online. So probably the tip is to get on an Airbus is much better than trying to get onto a computer. But
oh, Lawrence, I think we've lost Chris there. I think the internet's letting us down tonight.
I think we've definitely got some technical problems. But okay, well let me just talk to you about what's happening in the sort of second half. Hopefully, Chris will be able to get back online and talk through that. But in the second half, I teach you a series of tried and tested coping strategies and techniques that will actually work on any fear, no matter what it is. In fact, what I really kind of say to people is that I'm actually going to teach you a series of live tools that you'll be able to use in many other situations in your life that might make you potentially scared or anxious. So it's kind of really useful as not just for fear of flying. And so I'll tell you one thing, that you're going to leave the room empowered, inspired, and you're really ready for the experience flight the very next day. Okay, so let's just have a look. So please send in, if you didn't hear me maybe the first time around, just send in your questions. Keep sending in questions. We're trying to answer those questions, you know, as many as we can, but just keep them rolling in, because we get them on sort of as they come up. We're just trying to sort of pick out as many questions as we can. So I think Mark is very interesting because he's the course director, but he's also, he used to be a phobic. Now he actually is the course director with the fear of flying. So it'd be interesting to hear from Mark's perspective, because I think people can really kind of relate, you know, can really relate to that. So Mark.
Yeah, well, as you say, Lawrence, and evening everyone again, I am the ex-phobic of the course, although I hasten to add my phobia was about 15 years ago, and if you've researched our site you might have found that already. I stopped flying principally actually through a fear of turbulence. I suppose also I had a fear of takeoff, I had a fear of a flight, I had a fear of a holiday, I had a fear of the return flight once I got there. So in the end it built to such an extent, and it had probably been building over many years without me realising it, and one day it creeped up on me through a turbulent flight back from a holiday. And I said to my wife at the time, that's the last time I'm getting on a plane, and I kept to my word for nearly 2 years. Until, in my case, I sort of wanted to understand how the plane flew. I needed to understand the technical side. I suppose I just had a fear of the unknown. Unknown because I'm not qualified to fly a plane, I'm not a pilot, and of course I'm not going to know what the sounds are, or why the engines are going up and down in noise, why we take off and suddenly there's this dipping sensation where and then we take off again, it seems, and all those sort of things were going through my mind. So being a typical control freak, and I think most of us probably are, I was very scared of not being in control of that aircraft. And of course, as I say to all our participants now when they come on the plane, they're sitting there trying to fly the plane from the back seat, which many of us are guilty of, is don't do it. You're not qualified to fly the plane, and actually it's about trusting the aircraft and the men and women who are in that cockpit, who are trained every 6 months to do what they do so well. And we're trying to do it for them, and you know, we're trying to second guess what they're doing and why that noise is making whatever it's doing, and with no real understanding that actually in front are two very qualified people who are tested regularly to ensure that their skills are as they should be, doing the most perfect job and with the most incredible equipment, tools, equipment, or electronic equipment, so to speak, that actually gives them what they need to fly that plane. And one of the things we go through on the course actually is the redundancy systems that are in place to help them, so that if something were to give them a bit of a glitch, and you know, we've got Chris tonight with his internet troubles as a prime example, they would have something in place, unlike Chris, who I think might be joining us again now, but they'd have something in place to help them deal with it. Hopefully Chris has also got something in place. I think his microphone's now unmuted. Chris, can you hear us?
yes, I can hear you.
Okay, your connection last time wasn't so great, so hopefully we've got you back. I was just giving everybody an overview of my phobia. But obviously, you're best placed to talk about what I was talking about. Actually, the men and women who fly the planes and really their skills and how often they're tested. But maybe a good opportunity for you to talk. Actually, we've got a question come in from John. So, Chris, this is going to be perfect for you. John's asking, if the engines fail, can a plane glide?
Well, absolutely, and glide is exactly the expression that we should talk about, because essentially it's the wing that creates lift on an aircraft, and of course by definition gliders don't have engines. So should an engine fail, firstly the thing to say is there'd always be another engine, and therefore the aircraft's perfectly capable of climbing, even if an engine should fail at the most critical point in the takeoff. But if both engines should fail on a twin-engine aircraft, essentially all the pilots would do, and this is what they get trained for, is lower the nose of the aircraft and essentially become a glider. From altitude, from their cruising altitude, an aircraft can glide, a commercial aircraft, an airliner can glide for more than 100 miles. So that's a huge distance. And this is something we would practice, and we do practice regularly in the simulators.
Okay, so remember, keep your questions rolling in. Lynn has got a question. I have a profound fear of noises on the plane, especially the ping that sounds, and I think it sounded before a message to say the plane is going to crash. So obviously, you know, what's very interesting on the course, you know, the pilot will go through every sort of noise that you would hear, even from walking onto the plane to when you're in flight, the kind of sensations as well. Chris, again, perfect person to answer this question about the noises.
Well, there are a lot of noises on the aircraft, and quite often for people who are anxious, essentially it is purely the fact they're not familiar with those noises. I mean, how many times do you get in a car, for example, and sort of you're used to the sound of the gear changing, or when you drive up a hill, you put the car into a lower gear, and of course the engine races away. In a car, you're perfectly familiar with that, so your body interprets that normally. On an aircraft, it's a little bit different. You're usually in an unfamiliar environment, and we spent an awful long time on the course. We've got some great audio-visual aids as well to actually go through all the sights, all the sounds, all the sensations. And then, of course, on the experience flight, I'm actually sitting, or one of my colleagues will be sitting in the cabin, giving live commentary throughout the duration of the flight. So from when we start the engines, when we take off, all those elements of the flight are all covered, and somebody's giving you that reassuring talk throughout the entire flight. So by the time you finish the course on day 2, there won't be a sound, there won't be a sight, there won't be a sensation that you haven't felt on an aircraft before. So that means that you will be in a very good place to go flying the next time.
So what's interesting, I just sort of ran a poll which you kind of got involved with, and fear of flying is actually made up of multiple different aspects. And the main ones are fear of heights, fear of enclosed spaces or claustrophobia, and fear of being out of control. And we always ask this of the people that come on the course, and it appears no different on this webinar, because 65% of you have kind of voted as having a fear of being out of control. And that does seem to be the biggest obstacle, the biggest fear for people. There are obviously lots of other subcategories of the fear. You know, fear of having a panic attack. It's almost like the fear of the fear. Fear of turbulence. And in fact, we have a question from Dorothy. Dorothy says, what causes turbulence? On the course, we give a very long, the pilot gives a very long explanation of turbulence. It's an amazing kind of explanation that really kind of puts people's mind at ease. But perhaps just a summary, Chris, if you could go over turbulence.
Well, I'll give a very brief summary because obviously we do cover it at some huge length on the course, because one of my objectives really is to make sure that by the time you leave the ground course, you've got the 150% confidence and understanding that you know exactly what's going on. And of course, turbulence, as Mark mentioned with his phobia a little bit earlier, and a lot of people, turbulence is the big one. So we really cover that very comprehensively on the course. The thing I will say, though, just in summary, is that actually the turbulence that you feel on an aircraft feels incredibly amplified, but when you actually see the aircraft visually, either externally or look at the cockpit instrumentation, actually the movement is very, very subtle, but of course it's your body's interpretation of that.
Have we lost Chris?
I think we have. I think his internet connection is...
Okay, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll come back to Chris's question. Sorry about that, guys. But in the meantime, I'm going to answer Anne's question, who said, can you stay overnight at the venue hotel? Do you get a discounted rate? And just to explain how that works, and a good opportunity just to explain again, maybe just reinforce some of the messages that Lawrence gave out at the beginning, as to it's a 2-day course. And the reason for that is because we want you to not be focusing on the flight on the first day. We want you to really focus on the ground course. I know when I had my phobia that I wouldn't have wanted a flight at the end of the course, because it would have just set me up for an anxiety before I'd even got into the ground course. So really it's about having you focused on the ground course, and then from there, the next day, we want you to make that conscious decision to come back and take the flight. Because also it means that when you do that yourself, next time you fly, you're not going to say, yeah, but they motivated me to get on the plane, or they held my hand, or there was peer pressure that went on. We're at the airport the next day. Lawrence and I are at check-in waiting for everyone, and whoever our captain is with us as well. And we don't know who's going to turn up. Well, we do, because actually we know from our course statistics that virtually every single person turns up, but in theory we don't know who's coming until we see you the next morning. But the idea of that is you're making a conscious decision to return. So in answer to the question, Anne, about the hotel, yes, of course you can stay over in the hotel. We don't get any special rates there. I actually advise people to look at things like booking.com or hotels.com. Often you can get a good rate on there if the hotel themselves aren't offering a good rate. The price of the course has been priced so that people, if they want, can stay in hotels, but obviously everybody has a different budget and everyone has a different hotel expectation and what experience they want from the hotel. So we leave it for everybody to choose their hotel if they are staying in the local area, as to whether they want to go into a low-cost style or whether they want something more luxurious. So that's really a question of choice. But in principle, of course, you can stay over in the hotel, and lots of people do. We're all there as well, so it's quite nice because we'll often meet you for breakfast in the next morning and have a chat. So it just helps keep people sort of keeping them sort of comfortable if there's any anxiety hanging around. But no, you can stay over.
Okay, so keep your questions rolling in. Diane says, as a regular flyer twice a week for 6 years, how do you think this course will help me? I'm so worried about turbulence. That is my biggest worry. Diane, look, you'll be in a room full of people that think and feel exactly the same way as you do. We have people that fly regularly, but they fly with Valium. They call it a Valium sandwich, or they get drunk when on the flight, which is not very good at all. Or they, people that have never flown before. In fact, the people that have never flown before are actually pretty much the easiest to cure, because it's just a fear of the unknown. We go through exactly what turbulence is. So whether it sounds like you're more worried about the technical aspects of flying, specifically turbulence, and as I say, we give a huge explanation. What is turbulence? We have graphics where we show, a plane as well as a car on a road. Kind of see them side by side. You actually realise that the bumpy road is actually moving this bowl of water much more than when the plane is in turbulence. So I think, first of all, that once you actually take the fear of the unknown away, in a sense you understand what turbulence is, and turbulence is in no way going to bring a plane down, that turbulence is safe, and the pilots are completely confident and happy to fly in turbulence. I think once you understand that side of it, the technical aspects of flying, then that will certainly help you, and you'll feel a lot better about that. Okay, so hopefully that's helped. Alison says, when will there be a course in Newcastle? Mark?
Good question, Alison. Actually, yesterday, I'm delighted to say that I was at EasyJet HQ organising all our aircraft for next year. So we are about 2 weeks away from that. We're hoping, and they're trying to put out all the stops for us at head office, because unfortunately with some of the bases, because the planes, I think Newcastle has 3 or 4 planes, but because they have so few, and also because they're so busy, it's a question of securing an aircraft for the course, because obviously that's part of the process. We're hoping that it's either going to be May or June for Newcastle, I'm afraid, next year. The other option, obviously, I know it's quite a journey, but we've had people come from Newcastle to Edinburgh. We've got Edinburgh in a couple of weeks. That's possibly an option if you need to fly before May or June next year if you're in the Newcastle region. But Our struggle with sometimes is literally just securing the aircraft, but that's the important part of the process. And talking about the aircraft, actually, obviously with Chris, and hopefully he's back online with us in a second, and maybe can go back through that turbulence because I think he's there. But Chris, whoever's in the cabin, will be giving that full running commentary of everything that's going on. So really, that cements everything you hear on the ground course. Chris, are you back with us?
Yeah, I've been struggling. Unfortunately, I live in the countryside and the signal is not terribly good, but hopefully you can all hear me now. As Mark mentioned, I'm giving a running commentary, or one of my colleagues is giving a running commentary during the flight. And the reason for that is really to embed all the things we've learned on the ground course on the first day, because although the audio visuals are absolutely fabulous, there's nothing like taking a real flight. So by the time you get off the experience flight at the end of day 2, you will have the confidence that you know exactly what's going on, because you'll have witnessed every sound, every smell, every sensation that you would have on a typical flight. And we give that so you've got the confidence to actually, on a subsequent flight, take to the air as a fearless flyer on your own without us necessarily holding your hand.
Now, John says, recent events when pilots crashed planes on purpose have frightened me. So, Chris, I think, again, that's over to you for that one.
Well, I think that specific incident, I think, has been a shock to the industry as a whole, because nobody can remember such an incident as the Germanwings, and even now the authorities are trying to grapple with how best to tackle that. What was done absolutely immediately, or within about 2 or 3 days of the event, and this pretty much was done across all European carriers, was to actually change the rules for leaving pilots or in the cockpit, because what the procedure used to be was that if one of the pilots wanted to go to the bathroom, for example, he would leave the other pilot at the controls. Autopilot's always flying the aircraft, so that's not a problem at all. But there was, at that one point, there was a single pilot in the cockpit of the aircraft. Post the Germanwings incident, then the regulations or the guidance has changed, and now all carriers ensure that when one of the pilots does go for a nature break, another crew member is in the cockpit. So at all times there are 2 people in the cockpit. So that's just the sort of mitigation that's taken place to avoid something like that as a reoccurrence. But of course we're also looking very deeply now into how the recruitment process goes, and we've had a very robust process for that for a number of years. But of course it's making sure that we put all the barriers in place to prevent any reoccurrence. And despite this absolute tragedy, it's really important that industry learns from that and makes aviation safe, much safer. And that's of course our primary concern.
There's a couple of questions actually I want Mark to answer. Lillian has said, Mark, I've never flown. What happens at the airport? And also Adele has said, can my partner come along on the test flight with me? He loves flying. So Mark, I'm going to move over to you for that.
Thank you. Okay, well, in answer to Lillian, who's never flown, that's not uncommon. We get people that haven't flown on the course. A lot of people come because they fly and they've become anxious over it, but we also have people that have never flown before. So obviously for you, and Lawrence will go into this a bit in detail, but you have a fear of the unknown. Now, in terms of what happens and how it works, we will obviously be at the airport. So obviously the ground course is the ground course. You'll come to the hotel, and that bit's quite easy. It's you know, obviously you sit there and Lawrence and the captain do all the work, and you're just there literally just taking it all in. When it comes to the next day, we will be at the airport, which if you've never flown is like a very large but quite modern normally bus terminal or bus station if you want, but much more luxurious. And there's a number of check-in desks, and we will be at the front of the relevant check-in desks. They're all numbered, and we'll be at the front of the relevant numbered check-in desk where you'll obviously come and check in. So we'll tick you off our list, we'll send you through to the check-in clerks, they will check you off their list, they'll give you a boarding card. That allows you to go through the security channels. You have to pass through security, and again that's something we cover on the course in terms of the safety aspect, because obviously people are worried about terrorism. So they go through a very robust, or everyone, including you Lillian, would go through a very robust security process where you and your hand luggage are checked. You'll then move through to a very comfortable airport departure area where there's shops and food outlets, an opportunity to grab a coffee if you're early enough. We then go to the departure gate, so that's where everybody will gather, including us. So once we've checked everybody in, we'll join you at the departure gate, where the aircraft will be waiting for us, and at a certain time we'll all get on board. The whole team's with you, and that's the process we will go through. In answer to, who was the question from? It was Adele, was it? Adele was asking whether her partner can come on the test flight. Yes, he can, Adele. At the time of booking, you can book a companion on the flight with you. It's only £69. Actually, we get a lot of people coming, and they quite enjoy it, even though they love flying and they enjoyed the flight. Actually, for them, it's a very unique moment because they've never had an opportunity to hear a running commentary from a captain, not the guy flying, because they're focused on what they're doing in the cockpit. But if it was Chris, he'd be in the cabin with us, so you can actually see Chris as he's commentating. And to actually hear everything that's going on for a regular flyer is quite interesting, because even they're learning stuff as they go along. Why there's a certain vibrations we're coming into land, which might be the air brakes, and Chris will make a point of actually pointing that out. So you'll be looking out of the wing, seeing the air brakes come up. But yes, in answer to your question, you can bring a partner with you. The other one I wanted to pick up on was Diane, who said, "Thank you for your help. My job will depend on if I can get over this fear, which seems mad as I've done it for so long, but with clenched white knuckles all the way." Diane, welcome to my world. That's where I was. That's exactly where I was. And in fact, my job did depend on it. I had a business back then, and when I lost my nerve, I had to actually bunk a flight and pretend to my business partner at the time that I was ill, which was highly embarrassing. So I totally get that. But as I say to anybody who doubts whether, one, they could get on the plane the next day, or two, does the course work? Well, obviously, read our success stories online. There's videos taken of people immediately that they get off the plane. So you get a very true reaction from people that haven't flown for many years. But what I would say to you is, what have you got to... Okay, silly question I'm going to say, what have you got to lose? I accept it's £189. But outside of that and beyond that, for those of you who are worried about this course because you know there's a flight at the end of it, my question is, what can happen to you in a hotel room literally for 3 hours? And the other point to bear in mind then is people visualize. I talk to a lot of people on the phone before they take the course because they're not sure if it's for them, and they just want that that insight as to what we do. And they sort of try to visualize themselves on the flight the next day, and they've got this thing about, well, I don't know how I'm going to panic. I'm going to freak out on the plane. I don't want to make a fool of myself. I don't want to be feeling like that. What am I going to do? And I say to them, look, you can't visualize how you're going to feel the next day because you haven't had the benefit of Lawrence and the captain for 3 hours giving you an insight into the technical and the psychological aspects of this. So obviously, Chris or his colleagues, or whoever's on the stage at the time, will give you all of the technical know-how that you need. We don't want you to fly, don't want you to become a pilot, but what you'll need to help you understand how a plane flies, the physics behind it, the redundancy systems in place. So you'll have all of that knowledge that you then can't remove. Once you've got that knowledge, it's yours. And Lawrence will then give you the techniques in terms of trying to bust any phobia. So some people need a psychological fix, some people need a technical. So if you need a psychological fix, that's where Lawrence comes in, and his techniques are great, and I've used them actually in other aspects of my life before we formed the Fear of Flying course. And in fact, funny enough, one of our cabin crew, who's now a cabin manager, came on a Gatwick course 2 years ago, and she'd never got to cabin manager because she was worried about public speaking, and actually took some of Lawrence's techniques into a public speaking phobia, and lo and behold now is cabin manager and happily on the PA, but something she couldn't do until she'd been on the course, and she was there just to observe. So this thing does migrate across other aspects of phobias anyway. But yes, I think the point I'm trying to make is, if you're worried about the flight the next day, don't visualize yourself on the flight. Visualize yourself in the classroom. It's actually a nice hotel function suite, but visualize yourself in the classroom, getting all the knowledge you need before you can even begin to think about how you're going to be on the flight. Sorry, Lawrence, I'll hand back to you after that long soliloquy.
No, that's fine. Now, Vicky has said, my fear is being up in the sky and feeling out of control as I can't get off. Fly next Thursday, already having panic attacks. Any advice? Well, Vicky, I mean, the first thing I would say to you is people have panic attacks. It's more the fear of having a panic attack that actually fuels. So you're seeing the worst case scenario. You'll see a negative mind move in your head. You'll see yourself on the plane having a panic attack, and that is actually what causes the panic attack. The best advice that I can give you right now, since you fly next Thursday, is to control your breathing. when you control your breathing, you will absolutely 100% control your panic attacks. And on the course, I'm going to teach you a whole load of techniques in order to do that. But just sort of so that you have something for Tuesday when you what you should do is to make sure that you're breathing from your belly and not from your upper abdomen, because when people are anxious, they're breathing from the upper part of their abdomen. And you can actually tell, just put your hand on your belly, and if your breathing seems to be coming from your upper torso, then you're breathing in the wrong place. So just focus on getting your breathing to your belly and nice deep breaths. And when you do that, it will actually start to control your state, and it will control your panic attacks. As I say, please try and get yourself on a course, because then I can really give you a whole set of tools and techniques, to help you with panic attacks. But that's certainly one thing that you can do on Thursday that will help you to control the panic attacks. So I certainly hope that helps. Please try and get yourself on the course, though. Okay, so we've got a question here from, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, forgive me if I'm not, Itai. And it says, how safe is flying with EasyJet as a low-cost company compared to other regular companies such as El Al, KLM, BA? Now, we get this question a lot on the course. I'm going to hand straight over to Chris, because Chris will be able to explain exactly how that sort of works.
Hello there. Well, just to give you an update on that, essentially incredibly safe. There's one thing that you can't cut corners on, and that is the maintenance of the aircraft, the training of the crew, and there's an awful lot of legislation all across the Western world, which includes down to the qualifications the crew need to have, the type of training they need to have, the maintenance that's required on the aircraft, the checks that go into making sure the maintenance personnel are qualified, and of course then there's all the regulation around what type of aircraft and the various things. So in very brief summary, you've got a situation where you've got a very highly regulated market with regard to aviation. You've got an oversight mechanism through the National Airworthiness Authorities, and on top of that you've got another layer called EASA, which is the European agency, which oversees the country's national authorities, and all of those measures are in place to ensure that the regulations are very strictly adhered to. Just as a comparison, I mean, we often talk about sort of pilots and training, and it seems a little bit flippant, but we're under the testing microscope, if you like, 8 hours every 6 months to ensure that we maintain the high standards of alertness and preparedness for flying, to ensure that we fly safely. I could happily be corrected, but I can't think of another career or another industry that has that level of checking and training to ensure that personnel are always at the top of their game. And as a result, it does mean that aviation, commercial aviation in the Western world, is by far the safest means of transport.
Lawrence, can I just come in on a question from Lynn? Lynn's asking about can you pick up if can you pick if you want to sit by the window or pick an aisle seat? If you're talking about our course, Lynn, the answer is principally yes. The aircraft will hold, depending on whether we're on a 319, which is one of the smaller out of the two of EasyJet's aircraft, but they have a 319 and a 320. Even if we're on the smaller one, there is 156 seats, and typically we would have no more than about 100 to 120 people on the plane. So there's always plenty of option of seats, and we've never had anybody not sit where they want to sit, so that'll be fine. In terms of when you fly, generally, obviously airlines now offer the opportunity for you to pre-reserve a seat. There is sometimes a premium for that, but it's only sometimes a few pounds depending where you're flying or which airline you're flying with, so that option remains open for you. And also, just to pick up Dorothy's question, is there an age limit on the courses? Dorothy, no, there isn't. In fact, today we had a 9-year-old book on the course. Well, her mother did it for her. And I think the oldest person we've had on the course from memory was 84. But actually, we have a wide range of ages, and obviously male and female, but a wide range of ages of people coming on. One of our best successes with a chap called Barry, who was coming up to his 70th birthday, lives under the flight path at Luton, hadn't flown for 40 years, and he got on the flight, and as a result he now comes back quite regularly just to join our other participants to help them subsequently, because he now loves flying. And this is someone that hadn't flown for 40 years and nearly didn't want to take the flight. So it just shows you that actually age is no barrier. And in fact, my view is, you know, really as you get older, and we're all getting there, life is for living, and places need to be seen, and holidays are for enjoying. And really you can't do it unless you're prepared to drive for hours from the UK, and it's quite restrictive. So that's what got me flying again, work and pleasure. And that's, I think that's really a motivation for most people that come on the course. And I think the other question from Adele, do people have relapses after the course? What is the course success rate? Adele, in answer to that, virtually every single person turns up on the flight from the ground course the day before. Often people that don't come are regular flyers who, we've had people that have come on the course on the Saturday, our flight's on the Sunday, they're flying on the Monday, they don't bother with our flight because they're flying Monday and they feel quite happy to just get on the plane on Monday and fly. They're not worried about the commentary, they're regular flyers and they feel that the ground course was sufficient. In terms of relapses, no, I think what happens is where you have someone who's taken the course and maybe hasn't flown for a year, they might come back on another experience flight, which is something you can do. And we get the occasional person wants to do it, and they just build up more confidence that way, rather than going straight onto a commercial flight to somewhere and flying back again. So if you wanted to do that, and I would say every flight we probably have 1 or 2 people, so not many. You know, if you think we've had probably approaching 3,000 people through the course now, and I would say on average maybe 1 or 2 people come back on every flight, and we've run probably 40 flights, so maybe that's 80 people have come back or felt the need to come back over the duration, but really just to build more confidence, and that's why they're doing it. The cost of that is £80. You don't have to sit through the ground course again. You can just do the experience flight on the next day, so you come straight to the airport once you've got your ticket organised with us. That's done through our office, by the way, as opposed to online, but that option is there. So in terms of successes, I'll probably refer everyone back to our website and just read the testimonials, and I think you'll see people just like you, just like I was, who never dreamed they could get on a flight or even begin to enjoy it, are coming off euphoric, and they're flying all over the world, and they're sending us pictures to prove it, which is lovely. And we hear from people daily now on their travels. So I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating, as they say, and I think if you just watch the success stories, you'll hear it from them rather than from me.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Keep your questions come rolling in. Susan says, what can you do for a person who is frightened of heights? And I'm also going to refer to, there's another question, just got to find it. I have to scroll to find it. Lillian, the reason I've never flown is because I have claustrophobia. Can you help me? So kind of similar questions. And as I was saying before, fear of flying is made up of multiple different aspects. You know, so claustrophobia is one of them. Heights is another one of them. It could be, you know, multiple other things. And the techniques that I teach will help on any fear. The point is, fear is fear. So the process to help you is exactly the same. You just need to apply it to whatever your biggest fear is. And most times, you know, fear is made up, or I always tell people that fear is created. I know some people kind of go, well, I don't create it, but actually you do, because, you know, other people aren't frightened of certain things. So it's created by certain patterns that you run in your brain. What I do is I get you to kind of realize what, you know, patterns that you've got running in your brain, make you aware of them. So in other words, you've got like negative mind movies that you're playing inside of your head of the worst case scenario. And you know, you'll start to say negative things to yourself. So it doesn't matter what your particular fear is, it's what you're doing, those kind of negative loops that you're running in your head, which actually then gives you that kind of rush of adrenaline and then makes you start to feel anxious, nervous, and then panicky. But the techniques that I teach will work on absolutely any fear, claustrophobia, whether you've got fear of heights, whether you've got fear of turbulence, whether you've got a fear of having a panic attack, you know, or being sick, or, you know. So it's very important, you know, if you're not frightened of the technical stuff, which a lot of people are not, it's more the psychological stuff. All of the second half is devoted to a whole suite of techniques, a whole set of tools that you'll have in your tool bag, which by the end of that second half, you'll be able to sort of, you know, use these really powerful tools to actually, interrupt those patterns, delete those negative patterns, and then replace them with patterns that are much more productive. And 3 hours is the total of the ground course, but it really is amazing what can be achieved. The mind's an amazing thing. It's like a computer, but like any computer, the mind can be reprogrammed. So absolutely, if you suffer from claustrophobia, if you suffer from heights, absolutely the techniques will work. 100% will work. Okay, so let's just. I'm
going to pick up, if I may, on Susan's first of all asking, will we have courses next year? The answer, Susan, is yes. We're just working through our schedule at the moment, and hopefully they will be on sale in about a month's time. I can't say exactly where they're going to be yet because it's all down to aircraft availability. So what I would say is, we've got Edinburgh, Stansted, Liverpool, and Belfast this weekend, all coming up over the next 4 or 5, 6 weeks. And people often say to me, well, if I take it now, is it too early because I'm not flying until next year, etc.? The answer is no. We've had people take the course and not fly for a year and been very happy just on the back of taking the course. And of course, the other thing about taking the course early that I say to people is, if we are back in the area, you can then jump on the experience flight again. So if you're looking to build your confidence before you go away, you get the course and the ground course with us, and the flight with us the first time, and then if you wanted to come back and take a second flight, you can. So that's an option for you. And also, in terms of Diane asking, can you just pay for the ground course? Diane, we don't split out the ground course from the flight. People often ask that because they don't want to do the flight. And my view is, as I say to them, is look, you really need to do the flight. That's part of the process, and it's really where we seal everything that happens on the day before in the ground course, and then you get the benefit of Lawrence on board, you get the benefit of the captain on board, I'm there as well, plus the crew. You don't have to fly, but obviously the price is the price, and that's how we structured it. But I would say to anyone who suggests that, unless of course diaries don't allow, invariably it's because they're thinking they don't want to get on the flight or they can't take the flight. So I'd just like to go back to that moment I said earlier, where I said don't visualize yourself on the flight, just come and do the ground course and then make your decision on the flight after that. But I'm pretty certain, because I speak to people all the time and we see it week in, week out, that people who say before they start they don't think they'll get on the plane, they're getting on the plane the next day, and comfortably. And that's the other thing to bear in mind, they're getting on comfortably. Someone asked, what about a panic attack on the plane? I think it said, do you deal with panic attacks, and what if you have one on the plane, Arsene? And yet Lawrence absolutely deals with panic attacks. That's one of the techniques that he'll be dealing with anyone that suffers with panic attacks. But the most important thing to bear in mind is that we don't do panic attacks on the plane. Again, you've had 3 hours of our learnings, if you want, our teachings. The guys are giving you everything you need to know. Coupled with the technical, you're going to have Lawrence's techniques. So when you get on that plane, you're not going to be thinking about having a panic attack. But if you were feeling anxious, and obviously some people might be more anxious than others, most people are quite relaxed. It's a very nice, relaxed flight, actually. There's a great atmosphere on board. But if for any reason you were feeling somewhat anxious, we would step in and help you. We've never, ever had a panic attack on board. We might have had someone starting to sort of feel uncomfortable, but then we deal with that straight away. And I think another question that Philip asked I saw earlier was about how long do we get after we board the plane before we close the doors? Is there time for us to make sure we want to go through with it? Philip, absolutely. We want you to be comfortable. The game here is not to get you on board, shut the door, quick, they're all on, let's go. It's not how we play it. We want you comfortable. You're not under any pressure from us. The door will stay open intentionally so that we've got people settled. But actually, when you get on board, Lawrence will do a nice relaxation technique with everybody. That helps just bring down any anxiety that might be there. But there is no pressure from us at all. That door will stay open until we feel you're all ready to fly. And people fly. We had no one get off the plane last week, as an example, or the week before we were in Luton. Door was open for a good 10 minutes. Everybody stayed on board. Everybody was happy. And we had a very euphoric flight, and everybody gets off happy. But if anyone is uncomfortable, the door remains open for them to stay, for them to get off. And Lillian's saying, how long's the test flight? Lillian, typically we'll be on the plane about 50 to 55 minutes, but the flight itself will probably be about 40 minutes, long enough for us to take off. We will then get to a height circa 18 to 20,000 feet. Obviously, at some point, they will have to turn around, so slowly but surely they'll make their way back to the airport and then come into land. So long enough for a takeoff, a bit of level flying, naturally some turning, and then a landing. But bear in mind, and a question again I'm asked all the time is, does anything out of the ordinary happen on the flight? Absolutely not. I mean, apart from the fact that they wouldn't be allowed to do it, this is a standard commercial flight. It's just going in and out of the same airport unusually. But the pilots will pilot it in the same way that they'll pilot any flight. So this is a standard commercial flight with no unusual turns or maneuvers. We don't go looking for turbulence. They don't create turbulence. They don't not create turbulence. It is what it is, and the flight will be the flight, and it will be like any other flight you experience. And actually, typically, our flight being 40 or so minutes, you can probably get to some parts of the country in that sort of time anyway. So it's like taking a short internal hop somewhere if you're going up to Manchester from Gatwick, say, or you're going up to Newcastle from somewhere in London. It wouldn't be far off that sort of timing. And I think there was one more question I wanted to do, which was long haul. I mean, Chris, obviously this might be one for you in a way, because the question's about long haul, and obviously we talk about EasyJet, we talk about Europe, but you might want to explain the difference, or not, as the case may be.
No, well, I think the thing to say with this is that the course is to enable you to fly, and whether you fly on EasyJet or whether you go on British Airways or Virgin on a long-haul flight, it still gives us the great satisfaction that we've helped you get to that point. And the number of postcards we've had and emails we've had and photographs sent to us from people all over the world that have, they've gone off to Disney World with their grandchildren, and it gives us a great sense of satisfaction to hear those really good stories. Essentially, the experience flight is exactly as Mark says. We literally, it's a 40-minute flight. We do a takeoff, we do a climb, we do a level segment, and then we sort of turn and we come back and we do a descent, then an approach and landing. Actually, the only difference between that and a long-haul flight is the fact that the cruise segment is arguably much longer. But other than that, we cover off all the elements, and whether it's a larger aircraft, an A340, for example, like Virgin used across the Atlantic, or an A330, or an A320, very similar. And to pick up on the point, because I think Adrian asked a question a little bit earlier, was about the redundancy of systems. All commercial aircraft have a number of redundant systems. So these are like what we might know as backup systems. So, for example, we've obviously got 2 engines on the aircraft. Each of those engines has a hydraulic system, and then we have a third hydraulic system as a backup to the 2 main systems. Flight controls is another area. There are 7 computers that actually fly the aircraft, so manage all the flight controls to ensure the aircraft turns properly and climbs properly, etc. Now, because there are 7 computers, just one of those computers is perfectly capable of flying the aircraft safely. So that's the sort of sophistication, and we go into a lot more detail, of course, as you would expect on the course, but just to give Adrian some reassurance, that's the sort of reassurance that and the redundancy of the systems that we have on the aircraft. So short haul, long haul, the only difference really is the length of the cruise segment, that's all.
Can I...
John says, I'm unable to fly this Saturday. I'm assuming, John, you're in Belfast. Can I just do the ground course? Well, John, what I would say to you is I would really try to free yourself up on the Saturday. But, we understand, sometimes it's absolutely impossible if your diary, you have something very important in your diary. But I would say, better to do the ground course than no course, but if you can, I would definitely free yourself up for the actual experience, right? Because you'll be missing out on something that's very valuable. Vicky says, "Thank you, defo booking the course." Well done, Vicky. It is all about taking action. That's the very first step is the biggest step. But once you take the action, then everything else falls into place, and your life will be changed. So well done for Vicky. Mark, you're about to say something, I think.
Yeah, sorry, Lawrence. I just wanted to pick up on Susan's point earlier. What can you do for a person who is frightened of heights? Susan, interestingly, I still have a fear of heights, even though I don't have a fear of flying. In regard of that, what I mean is I don't particularly like hanging off or looking over a balcony of a tall building, and yet in an aircraft it doesn't have the same impact. And just to tell you a story of a chap called Joe, Joe was in his 60s, lived in Liverpool. His testimony was on our website, so if you dig it out, you'll see it. Joe he's never flown. His biggest fear was heights, and such was his concern that he was worried about going on the air bridge, which he didn't know quite what it was, but he knew there was something that took him out to the aircraft, which was like the enclosed walkway you sometimes take out to the plane, which is only about 10 foot off the ground. But Joe explained to me that such was his fear of heights, that if you're in a shopping centre and you've got 2 levels, sometimes to get from one side of the concourse to the other on the upper level, you have to go across a sort of a wider concourse area because it's open to let light into the downstairs areas. And he struggled to do that, so his fear of heights was extreme. And to cut a long story short, he got on the plane. He initially sat in the aisle seat because he was very nervous, but by the end of the flight was looking out the window, amazed at the view. And although I think still has a fear of heights at very low level, interestingly, it didn't come out when he was on the plane. And that's how I feel. And I'm talking to anyone who has a fear of heights. I think the problem with people that have a fear of heights is actually they have a fear of falling, and I think they have a fear of an aircraft falling. So again, what you'll pick up on the ground course from Chris, who'll talk about effectively the physics of what keeps a plane in the air, and again, we use a lot of audio video to explain that. Your fear of falling, inverted commas, in relation to your fear of heights, in relation to flying, will be unfounded. You'll realise that it's actually not what you think it is. So I think that's what happened with Joe. So although Joe still has a fear of falling 10 foot off a balcony, he doesn't have a fear of an aircraft falling. So I think if you can bear that in mind, it will probably help you sort of think about the course and the benefits of actually getting on the plane and at least seeing what that can do for you. As I say to everybody, because I've been there and I know how debilitating it is, I know the restrictions it puts on you, the pressure. For me, it was the embarrassment. I had at the time 2 fairly young kids, and we couldn't go anywhere, you know, apart from drive to Euro Disney, I couldn't go anywhere. And I say to people, you know, give us, okay, it's 3 hours on a ground course, that's the easy bit. You don't need to think about the flight, but if you're going to, give us 40 minutes of your life and we'll change your life. And that's how I see this, because unless you do it, you're never going to know. And my passion about this is because I want people to get past and get to where I am. And people don't believe I was phobic because I got on a plane so happily now, and they see me on the plane, I'm smiling away, and turbulence doesn't faze me, and they don't believe they can get there. So I just hope that you do believe that I was phobic, because I really was, but also that you can see past this, that it is possible to get from where you are now, and I know how you are, and I know how you feel, and I've had the sweaty palms, and I've had the sleepless nights, and I know how it is. It is possible to get from that stage, because I'm proof of it, to getting on a plane, flying to New Zealand as I did 2 years ago, flying to America as I do regularly, flying all over Europe as we do. I mean, here's the irony. We've got a flight to Belfast on Friday. The team's flying there to do the course. We then have the flight Saturday afternoon. We then fly home on Saturday evening. So we're doing 3 flights. We're doing 2 just to get to do the 3rd one, which is with everybody while we're there. And I enjoy it now, but I can understand people would think that's mad and it doesn't make sense, but that's because you haven't got any knowledge. You're lacking knowledge, whether you're lacking techniques from Lawrence, whether you're lacking information from Chris, or any of our pilots who can just give you the facts that you need. You don't have the facts. And people say to me all the time, I know my fear's irrational. It's not irrational. As Lawrence will tell you in the course, it's only irrational if you hang on to it after the fact. But at the moment, you don't have the facts. Your fear is quite rational because you don't understand it. But once you understand it, it becomes irrational then. But actually, you'll lose it. You won't have that fear. Once you've got the knowledge, you won't have it.
Okay, Lillian says, how long is test flight? Between 45 to 50 minutes. And she also says, I live near Liverpool. Do you have a course at Liverpool Airport? Mark, yes, we do, don't we?
We do indeed. We've got a course in Liverpool on the 14th and 15th of November. The 14th is at the Adelphi in town at 2:30 for 3 hours, Lillian, and then the flight is on Sunday morning, and from memory I think it's about 11 o'clock, which I will check now because I've forgotten, because we've got so many flights I forget what time each one is. The flight is 11 o'clock on Sunday from John Lennon. So yes, we've got that. That's the last course of the season. And again, don't forget, prior to that, I know it's a bit further if you're in Liverpool to travel, but if those dates don't work, there is Edinburgh. I appreciate it's a journey. Obviously Belfast for those who are over there, because that's going to be a difficult one for anyone else to get to. And of course Stansted on the 7th and 8th of November. But anyway, and the other regions, so the regions that we've been in before, so hopefully we'll have a Manchester at some point next year, we'll be able to announce soon. Certainly another Bristol will be coming up next year. We'll be down in Gatwick at some point next year, and definitely up in Newcastle, subject to the schedulers doing everything they can to make that work for us so we can get a slot on the plane. So again, a couple of weeks from now, hopefully the dates will be out for the 2016 courses.
Okay, so look, we're sort of running out of time, so I just want to ask you all a question. A lot of you I know have been on sort of webinars in the past, and you probably know what happens. A lot of times, you know, you get all fired up and excited during the actual webinar, but you know, what happens the next day? You know, probably nothing, and that's a shame, because you know, by now you should know that we can definitely help you to overcome your fear. And my point is that old habits are really hard to break, and the only way for you to be successful is for you to figure out a way to break that old habit. And the way you're going to do that, to break that old habit, is by going on a professionally run course with over a 95% success rate. And that's where you're going to learn all the tools that you need to break all of those old habits, so that you can become absolutely free from this, you know, fear. So in essence, you do have two choices. Choice number one, you take action and you get yourself on one of the courses. Or choice number two, you end the webinar, you go to bed tonight, tomorrow you wake up and you're still crippled by this fear. So you really do have to decide which choice is best for you. Now, I'm really hoping that we've given you enough of a gentle push in the right direction tonight so that you will take action. And with that in mind, we want to offer you an incentive. So if you do book today, we want to give you 10% off. Now, you would have already seen that we've had this kind of discount code just to the right-hand side, and it's QA1015. So just take a note of that, QA1015. So if you use that code, it gives you 10% off the full course price. So instead of 189, it's 170.10 or 239.10 with a companion. So this 10% offer, it's only going to be available today, and it is an incentive for coming on to the webinar. So remember, you have two options. So right now you can book a course, turn your life around, or option number two, you come up with some excuse why you just can't afford it, or I don't know why now is not the right time, or you just don't have the time to take the course. You know what I'm talking about, excuse, excuse, excuse. So look, whatever your excuse is today, you know, you'll always have the same excuse tomorrow. So what you really need to learn to do is to ignore your excuses and make what you know is definitely the right decision to invest in yourself and to change your life forever. So you can go to the website, which is fearlessflyer.easyjet.com, or click on the link that you see on the right-hand side. So that's it for today, and I hope to see you definitely at one of our future courses. So it's a very, you know, thank you so much for attending and for your time, and it's a goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you on one of the courses soon.
And it's also goodbye from Chris, and once again my apologies for being late on the call, but wish you all the best of luck, and hopefully we'll see you on a course in the not too distant future. So thank you and have a very good evening.